She was on her knees in a kitchen, picking up broken glass, with bleeding hands, wearing a catering uniform in the house she used to call home. Her husband was upstairs in a $6,000 tuxedo, about to marry his pregnant mistress in front of 200 guests. His mother had just slapped her across the face and told her she was nothing. The guests watched. Nobody said a word. But here is what none of them knew. Not the groom, not his mother, not the bride, not a single person in that building. The woman on her knees, the one serving champagne at her own husband's wedding, the one they called the help. She owned everything. Every room, every wall, every blade of grass beneath their feet. A $1.8 billion real estate empire had just been placed in her name, and she had not told a single soul. Tonight, while they laughed at her, while they humiliated her, while they handed her $5,000 and called it severance, she was quietly waiting for the perfect moment to burn their entire world to the ground. This is the story of Nia Carter, and by the end of it, you will never underestimate a quiet woman again. Lesson and value. This story carries one truth that every woman needs to hear. Your silence is not weakness, your patience is not surrender, and the people who underestimate you today are building the stage for your victory tomorrow. If you have ever been made to feel invisible in your own life, this story is for you. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of your own strength or the strength of a woman you know, leave a comment and tell me, what would you have done in Nia's place? Hit that like button so more women can hear this message. Share it with someone who needs to be reminded that they are not nothing. They never were. And if you are not subscribed yet, join this family. We tell stories here that stay with you long after the screen goes dark. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss one. Marcus Carter stood in front of the gilded mirror in the master bedroom of Magnolia House, adjusting his tie with the careful precision of a man who believed the world was watching. And in many ways it was. 200 guests were gathering downstairs in the grand ballroom. The string quartet was warming up. And somewhere in the east wing, his bride was putting the finishing touches on her makeup. His bride. Not Nia. Not anymore. Marcus smiled at his reflection, and the reflection smiled back with the confidence of a man who had never once questioned whether he deserved everything he had. He ran his fingers along the lapels of his custom tuxedo, a $6,000 piece that fit him like it had been stitched onto his body. He looked good. He looked powerful. He looked like a man who was about to start the best chapter of his life. His phone buzzed on the dresser. A text from Jade. "Today we become official, baby. I love you." He typed back quickly. "Today we start fresh. Everything I promised you, it is happening." He set the phone down and took one last look in the mirror. Behind him, the bedroom stretched out in all its glory. High ceilings, silk curtains. A four-poster bed that cost more than most people made in a year. This was his kingdom. This was the life he had built. Or so he believed. 3 floors below, in a small service kitchen, tucked behind the main catering area, Nia Carter pressed a hot iron across a white catering shirt. The steam rose and disappeared, just like she had learned to do over the past 8 years of her marriage. Disappear, become invisible, shrink until there was almost nothing left. She held up the shirt and inspected it. Crisp. Perfect. The kind of work that nobody would notice, but everyone would complain about if it were wrong. That was the story of her life, doing everything right and getting nothing for it. She slipped the shirt on and looked at herself in the small, cracked mirror mounted on the kitchen wall. The contrast would have been almost funny if it were not so devastating. Upstairs, her husband was admiring himself in a mirror framed in gold. Down here, she was staring at her own reflection in a mirror, with a crack running right through the middle of her face. She was 34 years old. She had been a school counselor before Marcus convinced her to quit, told her that his career was enough for both of them, that she did not need to work, that her job was beneath the Carter name. She had believed him because she loved him, and because when Marcus Carter told you something with that voice and that smile, you believed it. Her counselor, the one she had seen in secret during the worst months of her marriage, had told her something she never forgot. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Nia had not believed Marcus the first time, or the 10th time, or the 50th time. She had believed him the 100th time, and by then, there was almost nothing left of the woman she used to be. Almost nothing, but not nothing. She straightened the shirt, pulled her hair back into a tight bun, and squared her shoulders. Today she was going to serve champagne at her own husband's wedding to another woman. She was going to carry trays and clear plates and be invisible in the house she had once called home. She was going to do all of this because she had been told to, because Carolyn had sent the invitation with a handwritten note that said, "We thought you could use the work." But there was something else, something that nobody in this house knew about, something that had arrived in a plain manila envelope 3 days ago, delivered by a lawyer she had never met, from a firm she had never heard of, regarding an inheritance from a woman she had loved more than anyone in this world. Her great-aunt, Evelyn Baptiste, the woman who had lived in a modest house in Savannah, who had made Nia sweet tea on summer afternoons, who had told her stories about strength and patience and the quiet power of knowing who you are when everyone else has decided you are nothing. Evelyn had died 6 weeks ago, and she had left Nia everything. Not a house, not a savings account, an empire, 340 properties across 12 states, commercial buildings, luxury residences, apartment complexes, undeveloped land. A portfolio valued at $1.8 billion. Nia had read the letter 7 times. She had not told anyone. Not Denise, not Marcus, not a single soul. She was still processing it, still trying to understand how the woman who made sweet tea in a kitchen with peeling wallpaper had secretly been one of the largest private real estate holders in the American South. But more than that, she was trying to understand what it meant, what she was supposed to do with it, who she was supposed to become. She tucked the thought away, picked up a tray of champagne glasses, and walked toward the ballroom. The sounds of laughter and music grew louder with each step. She could hear the guests arriving, the clinking of crystal, the murmur of conversation among Atlanta's black elite, lawyers, doctors, politicians, business owners, all of them here to celebrate Marcus and Jade. None of them here for her. She pushed through the service door and entered the ballroom. The first person she saw was Carolyn Carter, standing near the entrance in a cream-colored dress, her silver hair swept up, her diamonds catching the light. Carolyn looked like she owned the room. She looked like she owned the world. She did not own anything. But Nia was not ready to tell her that yet. 3 years before the wedding, Nia and Marcus were still something that resembled happy. It was a Saturday afternoon in July, and they were at a neighborhood cookout in Buckhead, the kind of gathering where the ribs were slow smoked and the laughter carried all the way to the street. Marcus had his arm around Nia, telling a story to a circle of friends, his voice big and warm and magnetic. Everyone was laughing. Everyone always laughed when Marcus talked. Nia's best friend, Denise Walker, pulled her aside near the cooler, holding a plate loaded with more food than any one person should eat. Denise was a night shift nurse at Grady Memorial, built like she could wrestle a bear and win, with a mouth that had no filter and a heart that had no limits. "Girl," Denise said, watching Marcus hold court across the yard. "That man is fine. I will give him that." But have you noticed he looks at himself more than he looks at you? Nia laughed. You are being dramatic. I am being observant. There is a difference. Nia waved her off. Marcus loved her. She was sure of it. He told her every day. He bought her flowers. He held her hand in public. He was building something, a real estate career that was growing fast, and he wanted her by his side. What Nia did not notice, because love has a way of making you blind to the things that matter most, was that Marcus never asked about her day. He never asked about her students at the school, where she worked as a counselor. He never asked what she wanted, because Marcus had already decided what she needed, and what she needed was him. 2 years before the wedding, things began to shift. Carolyn Carter came to dinner at their home. Nia had spent all day cooking, the kind of southern spread she had learned from Aunt Evelyn. Collard greens, macaroni and cheese, slow-cooked brisket, cornbread from scratch. She set the table with care, lit candles, put on soft music. Carolyn arrived in a black dress and pearls, her eyes scanning the dining room the way a health inspector scans a kitchen. She c'était bonne, unfolded her napkin with the precision of a surgeon, and took exactly 1 bite of the collard greens. Then she set her fork down. Sweetheart, she said, her voice as smooth as silk over a blade, have you ever considered taking a cooking class? Marcus grew up eating at the club. He is accustomed to a certain standard. The room went quiet. Nia looked at Marcus, waiting for him to say something. Anything. He was looking at his plate. He said nothing. Nia cleared the dishes in silence. In the kitchen, with the water running so nobody could hear, she let herself cry for exactly 30 seconds. Then she washed her face, dried her hands, and went back to the dining room with dessert. That was the night she learned that Marcus would never choose her over his mother. She just did not want to believe it yet. 1 year before the wedding, Nia found a receipt in Marcus's jacket pocket. A jewelry store, $4,000, a diamond pendant she had never seen. She asked him about it that evening, keeping her voice calm, reasonable. Marcus, I found a receipt in your jacket for a necklace. I have never seen it. Marcus did not even look up from his phone. It was a client gift, Nia. Do not start. You always do this. You look for problems because you are bored. Maybe if you had ambitions beyond that little school job, you would not have time to go through my pockets. The words landed like a slap, and Nia, the woman who had once stood in front of classrooms full of teenagers and taught them about self-worth and healthy boundaries, did something she would regret for years. She apologized. I am sorry, she said. You are right. I should not have gone through your things. Marcus nodded, satisfied, and went back to his phone. And something inside Nia, something small and vital, cracked. 6 months before the wedding, the crack split wide open. Nia came home early from work. A student had been absent, her afternoon session canceled. She pulled into the driveway, noticed an unfamiliar car, and felt something cold settle in her stomach. She walked inside. The house was quiet, too quiet for 2 in the afternoon. She climbed the stairs, her heart hammering, her mind already knowing what she would find, but her body refusing to believe it. She opened the bedroom door. Marcus was in their bed. And so was Jade Kensington. Jade was 29, an Instagram influencer turned real estate agent, with 100,000 followers and a smile that could sell anything. She was wearing Nia's robe, the silk one that Marcus had given her for their 5th anniversary. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Marcus looked at Nia, not with shame, not with guilt, with annoyance. You were supposed to be at work. Those 6 words ended 8 years of marriage more definitively than any legal document ever could. What followed was a blur that Nia would later reconstruct in fragments. Marcus did not apologize. He told Nia that she and he had been growing apart for years, which was true only because he had been pushing her away. He told her that Jade understood his world, his ambitions, his needs. He told Nia, with the calm cruelty of a man who had rehearsed this speech, that she was never built for this level. And then Carolyn got involved. Within 2 weeks, Nia was out of the house, not because Marcus threw her out, but because Carolyn orchestrated a campaign so methodical it was almost impressive. She told Marcus that Nia's presence was destabilizing. She arranged a small apartment for Nia on the other side of the city. She told Nia to be grateful. Marcus drove Nia to the apartment himself. He carried her single suitcase to the door and set it on the porch. And then he said the words that Nia would carry like a scar. I still care about you, Nia, but you and I both know you were never built for this level. Jade understands this world. Some people are meant to support. That is not an insult. That is just truth. He drove away. Nia stood in the doorway of a bare apartment with white walls and no furniture, holding a suitcase that contained everything she had left. She called Denise. She could barely speak. Denise answered on the second ring. Baby, what is wrong? He is gone, Nia whispered. He is really gone. Denise was quiet for exactly 2 seconds. Then she said, I am coming over right now with wine and a baseball bat. We are going to figure out which one we need. That night, sitting on the floor of an empty apartment, Nia Carter cried for the last time over Marcus Carter. When she woke up the next morning, stiff and red-eyed, with Denise asleep beside her on a pile of blankets, she made a decision. She was done crying. She was done shrinking. She was done being the woman who apologized for existing. She did not know yet that in 4 months, a letter would arrive that would change everything. She did not know that the modest house in Savannah held secrets that would shake the foundation of the entire Carter family. All she knew was that she was done. And sometimes, done is where everything begins. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday. Nia was sitting at her kitchen table in the small apartment, drinking coffee and scrolling through job listings on her laptop. She had started applying to counseling positions again, something Marcus had discouraged for years, and the simple act of filling out applications felt like rebellion. The knock at the door was sharp and formal. She opened it to find a man in a dark suit, tall, with close-cropped hair and wire-rimmed glasses. He introduced himself as Victor Brooks, attorney at law, representing the estate of Evelyn Marie Baptiste. May I come in? He asked. Victor did not waste time. He sat at her kitchen table, opened a leather briefcase, and placed a stack of documents in front of her. Then he placed a cream-colored envelope on top, sealed with wax. Your great-aunt Evelyn passed away 6 weeks ago, he said. I believe you attended the funeral. Nia nodded. It had been a small service in Savannah. A few neighbors. A pastor who had known Evelyn for 40 years. Nia had cried more at that funeral than she had at the end of her marriage. Evelyn left very specific instructions regarding her estate, Victor continued. She named you as the sole heir. Nia almost smiled. Aunt Evelyn's house in Savannah was old and beautiful, and the thought of inheriting it was bittersweet. She had spent summers there as a child, sitting on the porch, drinking sweet tea, listening to Evelyn talk about patience and strength and the quiet power of knowing exactly who you are. That is very kind, Nia said. I always loved that house. Victor paused. Miss Carter, the house in Savannah is one property, among 340. Nia set her coffee down. Victor opened the documents. Spreadsheets, property deeds, tax records, maps of 12 states with colored dots marking locations. He explained it methodically, his voice calm and factual, as though he was reading a weather report and not upending her entire understanding of reality. Evelyn Baptiste had spent 40 years quietly acquiring real estate across the American South. She bought her first property at 23, a small duplex in Savannah. By the time she was 40, she owned 30 buildings. By 60, she owned over 200. She never hired a publicist. She never appeared on any rich list. She lived in the same modest house, drank the same sweet tea, and attended the same church every Sunday. When Victor said the number, the total value of the portfolio, Nia asked him to repeat it. $1.8 billion, he said again. You are now one of the largest private real estate holders in the southeastern United States. Nia did not speak for a long time. She stared at the documents, at the numbers, at the map with its hundreds of dots spread across Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, the Carolinas, Florida, Mississippi, Louisiana, Virginia, Kentucky, and Texas. Each dot was a building. Each building was real. Each one now belonged to her. I do not understand, she finally said. How did nobody know about this? Evelyn was very private, Victor said. She structured everything through holding companies and trusts. The management of many properties was delegated to local firms, and in several cases to individuals who believed they were operating independently. He paused, and something in his expression shifted. Miss Carter, I should tell you that among the properties in this portfolio is an estate outside Atlanta known as Magnolia House, 47 acres, currently managed by a family named Carter. The room went very still. Nia looked at Victor. Victor looked back at her. And in that moment, the architecture of her entire life rearranged itself. Magnolia House, the mansion where she had lived with Marcus for 6 years. The estate that Carolyn called the crown jewel of the Carter family legacy. The property that Marcus bragged about at every dinner party, every business meeting, every Sunday brunch. It was not theirs. It had never been theirs. The Carters were managers, employees. They had been maintaining properties for Evelyn Baptiste, collecting management fees, and somewhere along the way, they had convinced themselves and everyone around them that they were the owners. Nia picked up the cream-colored envelope. She broke the wax seal and pulled out a handwritten letter. Evelyn's handwriting, the same careful script that had addressed every birthday card Nia had ever received. She read the first line. My sweet girl, if you are reading this, then I am gone, and the time has come for you to know the truth. She did not read the rest. Not yet. She folded the letter, placed it back in the envelope, and set it on the table. Mr. Brooks, she said, I need some time. Victor nodded. Of course, but Miss Carter, the transfer is time-sensitive. There are legal formalities that require your signature within 30 days. After he left, Nia sat alone in her kitchen for 2 hours. She did not call Denise. She did not call anyone. She sat with the knowledge the way you sit with something enormous and fragile, afraid that if she moved too quickly, it would shatter. Then, 3 days later, the second envelope arrived. This one was different. Ivory cardstock, embossed lettering, a monogram she recognized. The Carter family crest. She opened it and read the words inside. You are cordially invited to the wedding celebration of Marcus Damon Carter and Jade Elise Kensington. A smaller card was tucked inside, handwritten in Carolyn's script. We thought you could use the work. Consider it a kindness. Please report to the service entrance at 9 in the morning. Nia read it twice. Then she called Denise. Denise's reaction was predictable and magnificent. A kindness? She shouted into the phone. That woman said serving drinks at your own husband's wedding is a kindness? I am about to show her a kindness with my left hand. Nia waited for Denise to stop breathing fire. Then she said, I am going. The silence on the other end lasted 5 full seconds, which was an eternity for Denise. Excuse me? I am going, Denise. I need to see it. I need to see all of them in that house, pretending they earned it. I need to see it one last time. Denise started to argue, then stopped. She knew that tone. It was the tone Nia used when she had made a decision that no force on earth could change. Fine, Denise said, but I am coming too. I will get myself in as somebody's plus one, and I am wearing something expensive. If I am going to watch this train wreck, I am going to look good doing it. What Denise did not know, what nobody in the world knew except Nia and a lawyer named Victor Brooks, was that the house where the wedding was taking place, the house that the Carters called their legacy, belonged to the woman they had just invited to serve the champagne. Sometimes the smartest move is not the fastest one. When your whole world shifts, give yourself permission to sit with it before you act. Reaction is emotion. Response is power. Nia had learned this the hard way, and she was not going to waste it. The morning of the wedding, Magnolia House looked like a magazine cover. White roses lined every banister. Crystal chandeliers had been polished until they threw rainbows across the marble floors. A string quartet set up in the corner of the grand ballroom, running through their repertoire of tasteful love songs that all sounded the same. Nia arrived at 7 in the morning through the service entrance. Just as Carolyn had instructed, she wore the white catering shirt she had pressed the night before. Black pants, flat shoes. Her hair was pulled back, no jewelry, no makeup. She looked exactly the way they wanted her to look, like someone who did not matter. The catering manager, a woman named Rosa, who had no idea about the history between Nia and the groom, handed her a tray and pointed toward the ballroom. Champagne goes out at 10. Keep the glasses full. Stay out of the way. Nia nodded and went to work. By 9:30, the guests were arriving. Black luxury cars lined the long driveway, doors opening to release Atlanta's finest in their designer suits and couture dresses. Nia watched them from the kitchen window, recognizing many of the faces. These were people she had hosted at dinner parties, people she had cooked for, laughed with, sat beside at fundraisers and galas. None of them knew she was here, or if they did, they pretended not to. The first humiliation came at 10:15. Nia was carrying a tray of champagne through the foyer when Carolyn intercepted her. Carolyn looked magnificent, as always. Cream dress, diamond earrings, silver hair swept up in an elegant twist. She moved through the world like she had been born owning it, which was perhaps the biggest lie of all. Carolyn leaned close to Nia, close enough that Nia could smell her perfume, something French and expensive. "You know," Carolyn said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I always told Marcus you would end up serving people. I just did not think it would be this literal." She patted Nia's cheek the way you would pat a child who had disappointed you, then walked away without waiting for a response. Nia's grip tightened on the tray. But her face remained still. She had practiced this, the blankness, the emptiness. She had practiced being nothing until it almost felt natural. The second humiliation came 30 minutes later. Jade Kensington arrived in a white designer gown that probably cost more than Nia's apartment lease for the entire year. She was glowing, radiant, one hand resting on her pregnant belly, with the casual possessiveness of a woman who believed she had won everything. Jade saw Nia near the bar and stopped. Her eyes widened, then narrowed, then settled into an expression of exaggerated pity. "Oh my God," Jade said, loud enough for the cluster of guests nearby to hear. "You actually came? That is honestly kind of sad, but thank you so much for helping out." She paused, tilting her head as though she had just remembered something. "Could you get me a sparkling water?" No ice. The guests around them shifted uncomfortably. A few looked away. Nobody spoke. Nia picked up a glass of sparkling water and set it on Jade's tray without a word. Jade took it, smiled, and walked away. The third humiliation was the worst, because it came from the man she had once loved. Marcus found her in the hallway between the kitchen and the ballroom, about 20 minutes before the ceremony. He was in his tuxedo, looking every bit the image of success. He leaned against the wall, blocking her path, and looked at her with an expression that was worse than contempt. It was gentleness, the kind of gentleness that contains a knife. "I am glad you are here, Nia," he said. "I think this is good for you. Closure, you know. And honestly, seeing you here like this, it kind of confirms what I always knew." He paused, as if he were about to deliver wisdom rather than cruelty. Some people are meant to lead, and some people are meant to support. That is not an insult, Nia. That is just truth. You are never going to rise to this level, and that is okay. He patted her shoulder, the same way his mother had patted her cheek, and walked toward the ballroom. Nia stood in the empty hallway, holding a tray of empty glasses, and felt something inside her crack open. Not break, crack, the way the earth cracks before something grows through it. She made it to the kitchen before the tray slipped from her hands. Glass shattered across the tile floor. She dropped to her knees, picking up the pieces, and felt a sharp sting as a shard sliced her palm. Blood welled up, red against the white tile. A staff member rushed over. "Oh, honey, are you okay? Let me help you." Nia shook her head. She picked up the glass with bleeding hands, deposited it in the trash, and walked to the small bathroom at the back of the kitchen. She locked the door, ran the water, and looked at herself in the mirror. Her eyes were red, her hands were shaking. Blood from the cut was dripping into the sink, swirling pink against the white porcelain. And for one terrible moment, one honest, devastating moment, she almost believed them. She looked at herself, at the catering uniform, at the cracked mirror, at the blood on her hands, and she thought, maybe they are right. Maybe I am nothing. Then her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out with wet, bloody fingers and looked at the screen. A text from Victor Brooks. "Miss Carter, I need to confirm receipt of the inheritance documents. Please call me at your earliest convenience. The transfer is time-sensitive." Nia stared at the message. She read it twice, 3 times. Then she turned off the water. She washed the blood from her hands. She dried them carefully, wrapped a bandage from the first aid kit around her palm, straightened her shirt, pulled her hair back into its tight bun, and looked at herself in the mirror one more time. The woman looking back at her was not nothing. The woman looking back at her owned the ground beneath every person in this building. The woman looking back at her had been underestimated for the last time. She walked back into the kitchen, picked up a fresh tray, and headed toward the ballroom. The ceremony was about to begin. 200 guests sat in gilded chairs arranged in perfect rows across the grand ballroom of Magnolia House. White roses cascaded from every surface. Candlelight flickered against the crystal chandeliers, throwing soft patterns across the ceiling. At the front of the room, Pastor James Whitfield stood at the altar, Bible in hand, looking uncomfortable in a way that only Nia seemed to notice. The string quartet began the processional. Marcus stood at the altar, shoulders back, chin up, the picture of confidence. Jade appeared at the end of the aisle, beautiful and glowing, her hand resting on her belly, as she walked toward the man she believed loved her. Nia stood at the back of the room, tray in hand, and watched. She watched Marcus take Jade's hands. She watched him smile the smile she had once believed was meant only for her. She watched Pastor Whitfield open his Bible with slightly trembling hands and begin the ceremony. "Dearly beloved," he said, "we are gathered here today to witness the union of Marcus Damon Carter and Jade Elise Kensington." The guests smiled. Some dabbed their eyes. Carolyn, seated in the front row, looked like a queen surveying her kingdom. Marcus spoke his vows with the practiced ease of a man who had always been good at saying exactly what people wanted to hear. "You are my queen," he told Jade. "You are my future. You are my everything," Jade cried. It was beautiful and genuine and heartbreaking because Nia knew something that Jade did not. Those were the same vows Marcus had said to her 8 years ago, word for word. He had not even bothered to write new ones. Nia scanned the room. She noticed details. Carolyn was holding court, even from her seat, nodding regally at guests who caught her eye. Marcus's Uncle Walter was 3 bourbons deep before the ceremony even started, his face flushed, his tie already loosened. And there, in the corner, sitting alone with a drink he was not really drinking, was Raymond Carter, Marcus's younger brother, 30 years old, quiet, the one nobody paid attention to. He was staring at the ceremony with an expression Nia could not quite read. It might have been sadness. It might have been guilt. He caught Nia's eye across the room and looked away quickly, as if he had been caught doing something he should not be doing. Nia filed it away and kept moving. Her phone buzzed. A text from Denise, who had somehow talked her way in as the +1 of a distant cousin and was now seated in the back row wearing a dress that cost 3 months of rent. "If this man says Queen one more time, I am standing up and objecting on behalf of the English monarchy." Nia almost smiled. Almost. After the ceremony, while guests mingled and the champagne flowed, Nia stepped outside to make a phone call. She found a quiet spot on the back terrace, away from the noise, and dialed Victor Brooks. He answered immediately. "Miss Carter, I have been waiting for your call. I wanted to confirm that all documents are in order. The inheritance transfer is ready for your signature, Magnolia House, along with 339 other properties, is prepared for legal transfer to your name." Nia leaned against the terrace railing, looking out over the manicured grounds. 47 acres of gardens, fountains, and old magnolia trees. All of it hers. "What do I need to do?" she asked. Victor explained the process. Signature, notarization, filing with the county. He could have everything completed within 48 hours. "Miss Carter," he said, his voice careful, "I want to be clear about something. You own the ground they are standing on. Every room, every wall, every blade of grass. Your great-aunt made certain of it." Nia closed her eyes. She could hear the music from the ballroom, the laughter, the clinking of glasses, all of it happening in her house. "I need you to bring the documents to me tomorrow," she said. "I will sign everything." She hung up and stood there for a long moment, letting the evening air cool her face. She had a plan now. She would wait. She would let them celebrate, let them toast their new beginning, let them feel safe and victorious and untouchable. And then, when the moment was right, she would show them all exactly who owned everything they thought was theirs. She texted Denise, "Meet me in the kitchen. I need to tell you something." 15 minutes later, Denise stood in the service kitchen, staring at Nia with an expression that cycled through disbelief, confusion, rage, and finally a kind of unholy glee. "Let me get this straight," Denise said slowly. "You own this house?" Nia nodded. "And all the other houses?" Nia nodded again. "And they," she pointed toward the ballroom, "have been managing your family's properties this whole time, thinking they owned them?" "Yes." Denise was quiet for exactly 3 seconds. Then she grabbed a bottle of champagne from the counter and held it like a trophy. "Girl, that woman slapped you. In your own house. In your house." Nia took the bottle from her hands gently. "Not yet, Denise. Not tonight." "What do you mean, not tonight?" "You have the ammunition. You have the proof. Walk in there right now and shut this whole circus down." Nia shook her head. "Power is not about the moment you strike. It is about the patience to wait until your strike cannot be blocked. Denise stared at her. When did you become Sun Tzu? Nia allowed herself the smallest smile. I learned it from a woman who built a billion-dollar empire and never told a soul. The reception was in full swing. Dinner had been served, toasts had been made, and the dance floor was filling up with guests who had consumed enough champagne to forget that the first wife was somewhere in the building carrying trays. Nia moved through the crowd with practiced invisibility, her mind running calculations. She would sign the documents tomorrow. She would wait for the legal transfer to be complete, and then, on her own terms and her own time, she would claim what was hers. It was a good plan, a smart plan, a plan built on patience and clarity. It lasted exactly 45 minutes. Carolyn Carter took the microphone at 9:15. She stood at the front of the ballroom, champagne glass in hand, smiling at the guests with the radiant confidence of a woman who believed she was untouchable. I want to take a moment, Carolyn said, her voice carrying across the room, to address something important. Some of you may have heard whispers, rumors about property disputes regarding this estate and our family holdings. Nia, who had been clearing plates near the back, froze. I want to assure you all, Carolyn continued, that the Carter family has taken decisive steps to protect our legacy. As of this morning, our attorneys have filed a preemptive legal claim on Magnolia House and all associated properties through the Carter Family Trust. This estate and everything connected to it is and will remain Carter property. She raised her glass. To family, to legacy, to what we have built together. The crowd applauded. Marcus beamed. Jade squeezed his arm. Nia felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. She walked as calmly as she could to the kitchen, pulled out her phone, and called Victor. He answered on the first ring, and she could tell from his voice that he already knew. I just received notification, he said. Carolyn Carter filed paperwork this morning through a trust entity. It is fraudulent, Miss Carter. It has no legal standing, but it will trigger an automatic freeze on the inheritance transfer pending judicial review. We are looking at weeks, possibly months. Nia leaned against the kitchen counter. The champagne tray she had been carrying sat forgotten on the steel surface. So, I cannot do anything tonight, not without risking the entire claim. If you make a public declaration now, before the legal transfer is finalized, their attorneys will argue you acted under emotional duress. They will use it to challenge the inheritance itself. We need to be strategic. Nia hung up. The plan, the careful, patient, elegant plan she had built over 3 days, was in ruins. Denise found her 5 minutes later, took one look at her face, and knew something had gone catastrophically wrong. What happened? She knew, Nia said, her voice barely above a whisper. Carolyn knew about the inheritance. She filed papers this morning to block everything. Denise's eyes went wide. How? How could she possibly know? Nia shook her head. I do not know. Denise started pacing, which she always did when she was processing something terrible. Okay, I am a nurse. I solve problems under pressure. I once restarted a man's heart with a car battery. We can figure this out. Nia looked at her. That did not happen. It might have happened. The point is, we are not done. But they were done for tonight. Nia knew it. The window had closed. She would have to go back out there, keep carrying trays, keep being invisible, and wait while lawyers sorted through the mess that Carolyn had created. She picked up the tray. She straightened her shirt. She walked back into the reception, and the night got worse. Walter Carter, Marcus's uncle, found her at the bar around 10 o'clock. He was drunk, his face red, his voice too loud for the room. He leaned against the bar and looked at Nia with the kind of contempt that only comes from people who are deeply insecure about their own worth. Cannot believe you are still here, he slurred. You ought to be grateful they let you in the building. This wedding is not for you, sweetheart. You are never good enough for this family. Some guests nearby heard him. A few looked uncomfortable. Nobody said anything. Nia poured him another bourbon without a word. Then Marcus appeared. He had been drinking too, and the champagne had softened the edges of his cruelty into something almost worse: sentimentality. He found Nia in a hallway between the ballroom and the terrace, put his hand on her arm, and looked at her with glassy eyes. "I miss you, Nia," he said. "Jade is not you. Nobody is." He leaned in and tried to kiss her. Nia pushed him away, firmly but not violently. "Marcus, stop. You are drunk. Go back to your wife." But it was too late. Jade was standing on the balcony above them. She had seen everything. The scream came first, then the sound of heels on the staircase. Then Jade was in front of them, 8 months pregnant and shaking with rage, and a dozen guests were crowding into the hallway behind her. "You pathetic woman," Jade shouted at Nia. "You could not let him go? You had to come here and try to take him back?" Nia opened her mouth to speak, to explain, but Marcus was faster. "She came on to me," he said, his voice suddenly steady, the drunk act gone in an instant. "I told her to stop." The guests murmured. Eyes turned to Nia. She saw it on their faces, the judgment, the confirmation of what they had already decided about her. The desperate ex-wife who could not move on. Nia said nothing. When someone lies about you in public, the louder you scream the truth, the more guilty you look. She had learned that lesson from watching 100 students navigate the cruelty of adolescence, and it applied just as well to adults. She turned and walked away from the crowd, from Marcus, from Jade, from all of it. Her hands were steady, her face was blank, but inside something was burning. And then came the final blow. Carolyn found her near the front entrance as Nia was preparing to leave. The older woman moved through the crowd with the grace of someone who had been planning this moment all evening. "Nia, sweetheart," Carolyn said, her voice carrying just enough for the surrounding guests to hear. "I think it is time you went home. You have caused enough embarrassment for one evening." She paused, letting the silence build. "I have spoken with our attorneys, and I want you to understand something clearly. If you attempt to make any claims against this family or our property, we will pursue legal action. We will take whatever little you have left." She reached into her clutch and pulled out a check. She held it out to Nia. $5,000 for your trouble tonight and for the future. Consider it severance. The room was quiet. 200 of Atlanta's most prominent people watched as Nia Carter was handed $5,000 and dismissed from a house that she secretly owned. Nia looked at the check. She looked at Carolyn. She could have said something. She could have screamed the truth, thrown the documents in their faces, burned the whole charade to the ground. Instead, she took the check. She folded it carefully. She put it in her pocket, and she walked out the front door of Magnolia House for what everyone assumed was the last time. Outside, sitting on the front steps of the estate she secretly owned, Nia let the tears fall. Not many, not loudly, just a few, rolling silently down her face, catching the moonlight before they disappeared. Denise found her there 5 minutes later. She did not say anything. She just sat down beside Nia, put her arm around her, and looked up at the stars. They sat like that for a long time. Finally, Denise spoke. "We are going to fix this." Nia wiped her face. "I know. And when we do, I am getting that Mercedes." Nia almost laughed. She did not quite make it. But the sound she made was close enough. 3 weeks passed. Nia spent them the way soldiers spend the time before a battle, preparing, planning, and refusing to think about the possibility of losing. She met with Victor Brooks every morning at 8 o'clock in his office downtown. They reviewed documents, analyzed the Carter family trust filing, and built their case piece by piece. Victor was calm, methodical, and relentless. He had been Evelyn's attorney for 22 years, and he had promised her that Nia would receive every property, every asset, every penny that was rightfully hers. He was not going to break that promise. The breakthrough came in the second week when Victor brought in a forensic accountant named Grace, a quiet woman with thick glasses who could read a spreadsheet the way a detective reads a crime scene. Grace spent 4 days examining the financial records of every property the Carters had managed. What she found was devastating. Over the past 12 years, the Carter family had systematically embezzled from Evelyn's properties. They had skimmed rental income, inflated maintenance costs, created phantom vendors, and funneled money into personal accounts. The total amount was just over $14 million. This is not just a property dispute, Victor said, laying the forensic report on the table. This is criminal fraud, and it gives us everything we need to not only challenge Carolyn's filing, but to refer the matter to the district attorney. Nia stared at the numbers. $14 million, stolen from Aunt Evelyn while she was alive, and continued after her death by people who smiled and shook hands and called themselves a legacy. But there was still the question that haunted her. How did Carolyn know about the inheritance? The timing of her filing was too precise. Someone had told her. The answer came from the last person Nia expected. She was leaving Victor's office late one evening when she found Raymond Carter waiting in the parking garage. He was leaning against her car, his hands in his pockets, looking like a man who had not slept in days. "Raymond," Nia said, stopping several feet away, "what are you doing here?" He could not meet her eyes. "I need to tell you something, and you are going to hate me for it." It came out in fragments. Raymond had overheard Victor's phone call to Nia 3 days before the wedding. A call about the inheritance, the properties, the transfer. He had told Carolyn, not because he wanted to hurt Nia, but because Carolyn had leverage. Raymond had gambling debts, serious ones. Over $200,000 owed to people who did not accept late payments. Carolyn had found out and offered him a deal. Clear the debts in exchange for information. "She said she would destroy me," Raymond whispered. "She said she would tell everyone, cut me off, leave me to deal with the debt collectors on my own." Nia felt the anger rise in her chest, hot and sharp, but when she looked at Raymond, she saw something she recognized. She saw a person who had been manipulated by Carolyn Carter, twisted and used and discarded, just like she had been. "You told her about the inheritance," Nia said, her voice flat. "You are the reason she filed those papers. You are the reason I am standing here fighting for what is already mine instead of living in it." Raymond's eyes were red. "I know. I am sorry, Nia. I am so sorry." She was quiet for a long time. The parking garage hummed with fluorescent lights and distant traffic. "Will you testify?" she asked. Raymond looked at her for the first time. "What?" "Against your mother, against your family. Will you provide the bank records, the emails, the communications? Will you stand in front of a judge and tell the truth?" Raymond swallowed. She could see him weighing it. The cost of betraying his family against the cost of betraying himself. "Yes," he said, "I will." The final piece fell into place 1 week later. Victor filed a motion to dismiss the Carter family trust claim, supported by Raymond's testimony, Grace's forensic report, and $14 million worth of evidence of systematic embezzlement. The judge reviewed the evidence in chambers and issued a ruling within 72 hours. The freeze on the inheritance was lifted, Carolyn's filing was thrown out, the embezzlement evidence was forwarded to the district attorney's office for criminal investigation. Victor called Nia at 6 in the evening with the news. His voice, usually so composed, carried a hint of something that might have been triumph. "It is done, Miss Carter. The inheritance is yours. Every property, every asset, everything your aunt intended for you. It is legally, irrevocably yours. Nia sat in her apartment and let the words sink in. She thought about Aunt Evelyn. She thought about sweet tea and summer afternoons and a woman who had built an empire in silence and left it to the one person she trusted to use it well. Then she thought about Marcus and Carolyn and Jade and 200 guests who had watched her be humiliated and said nothing. She called Denise. "It is done," she said. Denise screamed so loud that Nia had to hold the phone away from her ear. Then Victor called back. His tone had changed. There was a weight to it now, something careful and measured. "Miss Carter, there is one more thing. Your great-aunt left a personal letter in the inheritance file, a letter specifically for you. I held it back until the legal matters were resolved. I think you need to read it now." The letter arrived by courier the next morning. Cream-colored envelope, Evelyn's handwriting, the same careful script that had marked birthday cards and Christmas notes throughout Nia's entire life. Nia sat at her kitchen table and opened it. "My sweet girl," Evelyn wrote, "if you are reading this, then the lawyers have done their job and you now know the truth about what I built. But there is another truth you need to know, one that is harder and older and more important than any property or dollar amount." The letter was 8 pages long. Nia read it 3 times before she fully understood what her aunt was telling her. Evelyn Baptiste and Marcus's grandmother, Dorothy Carter, had been sisters, not by blood, but by bond, raised together in a small town in Alabama after both their families were torn apart by poverty and circumstance. They had built their lives side by side until a dispute over a piece of land, a plot that Evelyn had purchased and Dorothy had claimed as hers, tore them apart. The family split. Dorothy married into money, or what she presented as money. She became Dorothy Carter, and she raised her children to believe they came from old Atlanta wealth. It was a lie, but it was a comfortable one, and over the decades, it hardened into something that looked like truth. Carolyn, the woman who would eventually marry Dorothy's grandson and become the matriarch of the Carter family, had discovered the connection years ago. She had done her research. She knew that Evelyn was the real source of wealth. She knew that the modest house in Savannah was a front for an empire, and so Carolyn had played the longest game imaginable. She had married into the Carter family, specifically to position herself near Evelyn's fortune. When Evelyn refused to include the Carters in her will, Carolyn changed strategies. She encouraged Marcus to pursue a career in property management. She helped him take over the management of several Baptiste properties. And when the time came, she guided Marcus toward the one person who could eventually inherit everything, Nia. Carolyn did not push Marcus toward Nia because she approved of her. She did it because Nia was Evelyn's only living blood relative. By controlling the marriage, Carolyn could control the inheritance. But Nia had proven difficult, too independent, too stubborn, too unwilling to simply hand over her life to the Carter machine. So Carolyn pivoted again. Get rid of Nia. Bring in Jade, someone younger, more pliable, more easily controlled. The plan was elegant in its cruelty. Discard Nia, install Jade, and when Evelyn eventually died, challenge the inheritance through Marcus's connection to the estate. Except Evelyn had seen it coming. She had updated her will just 3 months before her death, adding additional protections, naming Victor as the sole executor, and including the forensic trail that would eventually expose the Carters' embezzlement. Evelyn's letter ended with a paragraph that Nia read so many times she could recite it from memory. "They will try to make you small," Evelyn wrote. "They have been trying for years. But you come from a line of women who built empires in the dark, who survived things that should have broken us, and who never once asked for permission to be powerful. This is your inheritance, sweet girl. Not the buildings, not the money, the knowledge that you were never nothing. You were always everything. They just did not have the eyes to see it. Nia set the letter down. She sat in silence for a very long time. Her entire marriage had been orchestrated, not by Marcus, who was too self-absorbed to plan anything beyond his next haircut, but by Carolyn. The dinners, the insults, the slow campaign to make Nia feel worthless, it had all been strategic. Carolyn had been positioning pieces on a board for decades, and Nia had been the most important piece of all. The discovery should have destroyed her. It should have sent her spiraling into rage or despair or both. But something strange happened instead. Nia felt clarity. The kind of clarity that comes when every confusing thing in your life suddenly makes sense. She had not been weak. She had been targeted. She had not failed at her marriage. Her marriage had been a trap. And the woman who had set the trap had underestimated her in the most fundamental way possible. Carolyn had assumed that Nia would break, that she would cry and shrink and disappear and never fight back. She was wrong. Nia drove to Magnolia House on a Sunday morning. She chose Sunday deliberately. Carolyn always insisted on family brunch after church, a performance of togetherness that fooled no one but made Carolyn feel like the family was under her control. They would all be there. Marcus, Carolyn, probably Walter, maybe even Jade. Nia parked in the main driveway, not the service entrance, the main driveway. She walked to the front door, the big one, the one with the brass knockers and the leaded glass panels. She had not entered through this door in over a year. She did not knock. She used her key, the one she had never returned, the one Marcus had never asked for, because it had never occurred to him that it mattered. The foyer was exactly as she remembered it. Marble floors, crystal chandelier, a sweeping staircase that curved up to the second floor like a promise. The scent of fresh coffee drifted from the kitchen. She walked toward it. Marcus was at the kitchen table in a bathrobe. He looked terrible, haggard, unshaven, dark circles under his eyes. The confident man who had preened in the mirror on his wedding day was gone. In his place was someone who looked like he had been slowly hollowed out from the inside. He looked up and saw Nia standing in the doorway. His mouth opened. No sound came out. "Hello, Marcus," she said. He stared at her like she was an apparition. "How did you—" he started, then stopped. His eyes moved to the key in her hand. "I never gave it back," she said simply, "and it turns out it is still my door." Before Marcus could respond, footsteps echoed from the living room. Carolyn appeared. Dressed impeccably, as always, coffee cup in hand, she saw Nia and stopped. For exactly 1 second, something crossed Carolyn's face, something raw and uncontrolled. Fear. Then the mask slid back into place. "Nia," she said, her voice cool. "This is unexpected." "Is it?" Nia replied. She pulled out a chair and sat at the kitchen table across from Marcus. She set a folder of documents in front of her, the inheritance papers, the forensic report, Evelyn's letter, all of it. She looked at Marcus first. "I read Evelyn's letter," she said. Her voice was quiet, not because she was afraid, but because she did not need to be loud. The truth does not need volume. It needs timing. "I know why your mother pushed you toward me. I know you did not choose me, Marcus. I was a means to an end. Doms." Marcus looked like he had been punched. His mouth worked silently. He looked at his mother, then back at Nia. "That is not," he started. "I am not asking you to confirm it," Nia said. "I am telling you what I know. Your mother knew about Evelyn's wealth. She married into this family to get close to it. She positioned you to manage the properties, and when she needed a bridge to the inheritance, she pointed you at me." Marcus's face crumbled, not dramatically, not like a movie. It crumbled the way a wall crumbles when the foundation has been rotting for years, slowly, inevitably, completely. I did love you, Nia, he said, his voice cracking. Maybe not at first, but I did. Nia looked at him. She studied his face, the face she had once loved, had once trusted, had once believed would protect her, and she felt a sadness so deep it had no bottom. That is the saddest thing anyone has ever said to me, she replied. She turned to Carolyn. The older woman had been standing very still, her coffee cup held at exactly the right angle, her posture perfect, but her knuckles were white. Nia stood and faced her. I know who you are, Carolyn, not who you pretend to be. I know about Alabama. I know about Dorothy. I know why you married into this family, and I know what you have been doing for the past 20 years. Carolyn's jaw tightened. You do not know what you are talking about. Nia opened the folder and placed the forensic report on the table. 12 years of embezzlement, $14 million skimmed from Evelyn's properties. Your signature is on every document. The room was silent. Marcus stared at the report. Carolyn stared at Nia. You spent your whole life pretending to be above everyone, Nia continued. You told me I came from nothing. You told me I had no class, no breeding, but it was always you, Carolyn. You were the one who came from nothing. And instead of owning it, instead of being honest about it, you built your entire life on lies and other people's money. My family's money. Carolyn sat down. Not gracefully, not deliberately. She simply sat down, as if her legs had decided they were finished holding her up. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from Denise. It has been 20 minutes. Do I need to come in with the baseball bat, or are we good? Nia texted back. Stand down, but stay close. Jade came downstairs. She was in a robe, her belly large now, her face puffy from sleep. She looked at the scene in the kitchen, at Marcus's devastated expression, at Carolyn's rigid stillness, at Nia standing in the middle of it all, like the eye of a hurricane. What is going on? Jade demanded, her voice defensive, ready for a fight. But Nia did not fight her. She looked at Jade and saw something she had not expected to see. She saw a woman who had been used. Not as cruelly as Nia had been, and not with the same awareness, but used nonetheless. Jade, I am not here to fight you, Nia said. You are about to be a mother, and I think you deserve to know the truth about the family you married into, because they will do to you exactly what they did to me. You are useful. When you are not, they will replace you too. Jade looked at Marcus. Marcus could not meet her eyes. Take care of your baby, Nia said. That child deserves better than what I got. She gathered her documents, stood, and walked toward the door. She paused at the threshold and turned back one last time. You have 30 days to vacate this property. My attorney will be in touch with the details. She walked out of Magnolia House, through the front door, down the main steps, across the driveway she had once crossed carrying trays of champagne, and into her car where Denise was waiting with the engine running. So, Denise said, how did it go? It is done. Denise nodded. She put the car in gear. They drove in silence for a full minute before Denise spoke again. For the record, I still want that Mercedes. The weeks that followed were not the dramatic montage that movies would have you believe. They were slow and methodical and unglamorous, filled with meetings and phone calls and stacks of paperwork that could have filled a small room. Nia threw herself into the work with the quiet intensity of a woman who had spent years being told she was not capable of anything, and who was now proving, methodically, irrevocably, that she was capable of everything. She hired a team to audit all 340 properties. What they found was years of neglect dressed up as management. Dozens of tenants had been overcharged, maintenance had been deferred, buildings that should have been updated were crumbling behind their polished facades. Nia reduced rents in 16 buildings immediately. She authorized emergency repairs in 23 more. She sat in meetings with contractors and accountants and property managers, learning the business from the ground up, asking questions that nobody expected, and absorbing answers that made her sharper with each passing day. She was not performing. She was building. Victor Brooks became her right hand, not just as a lawyer, but as a guide. He had known Evelyn for over 2 decades, and he understood the philosophy behind the empire. Evelyn had never been interested in maximizing profit at the expense of people. She had built her portfolio on the belief that real estate was not just about buildings. It was about communities, about giving people a place to live with dignity. Nia carried that philosophy forward and expanded it. She converted Evelyn's favorite property, the modest house in Savannah, where Nia had spent her childhood summers, into a women's resource center. She named it the Evelyn Baptiste House. It offered job training, financial literacy, workshops, legal aid, and temporary housing for women rebuilding their lives after abuse, divorce, or economic hardship. On the day it opened, Nia stood on the porch of that familiar house. The porch where she had once sat drinking sweet tea and listening to her aunt talk about patience and strength, and she felt something she had not felt in years. Peace, not the absence of pain, the presence of purpose. Raymond Carter showed up at her office on a Wednesday afternoon. He stood in the doorway, looking smaller than she had ever seen him. "I am not here to ask for forgiveness," he said. "I am here to ask for a job." Nia studied him. She thought about what he had done, the betrayal, the weakness, the desperate deal with Carolyn that had nearly cost Nia everything. She also thought about what he had done after, the testimony, the records, the courage it took to stand against his own family. "You start Monday," she said, "at the bottom." Raymond nodded. "I would expect nothing less." He turned to leave, then stopped. "For what it is worth, Nia, you are the best thing that ever happened to this family. We just did not deserve you." Nia said nothing, but she filed the words away in a place where they could do some good. Denise's moment came on a Saturday morning. Nia drove to Denise's apartment, a cramped 2-bedroom in a part of the city that never quite got the attention it deserved, and handed her a key. Denise looked at it. "What is this?" "Property number 47, a 3-bedroom in Buckhead. It is yours." Denise stared at the key, then at Nia, then back at the key. Her face did something it almost never did. It crumbled. Denise Walker, the woman who had held Nia together through the worst moments of her life, who had shown up with wine and baseball bats and relentless humor whenever the world tried to break her best friend, stood in her doorway and cried. "I said a Mercedes," Denise whispered, wiping her eyes. "Not a whole house." Nia pulled her into a hug. "Consider it a package deal." They held each other for a long time. Two women who had survived different versions of the same struggle, standing in a doorway, holding a key that meant more than either of them could say. Pastor Whitfield visited on a Sunday, which felt appropriate. He sat in Nia's new office at Magnolia House, the office that had once been Carolyn's private sitting room, and he looked like a man carrying a weight he could no longer bear alone. "I owe you an apology," he said. "I knew what Carolyn was doing, not all of it, but enough. She pressured me to stay neutral, to not get involved, to not take sides. And I listened. I stood at that altar and officiated a wedding that I knew was wrong, and I said nothing. Nia listened. She did not interrupt. "I am sorry, Nia. I failed you." Nia was quiet for a moment, then she said, "Pastor, I do not need your apology. What I need is for you to do better for the next woman who sits in your office asking for help. Do not be neutral when someone is being destroyed. Neutrality is not kindness, it is cowardice in a suit. He flinched, but he nodded. And when he left, Nia believed he meant it. 6 months later, Nia sat in a glass-walled office in downtown Atlanta. The skyline stretched out behind her, glittering in the late afternoon sun. She had just finished a meeting with a group of investors who were funding the expansion of the Evelyn Baptiste House into 3 more states. Her phone rang. She looked at the screen. Marcus Carter. She considered letting it go to voicemail, but something about the moment felt like it needed an ending. Hello, Marcus? The voice on the other end was barely recognizable. It was thin, stripped of all the confidence and charm that had once defined it. Nia. I have nothing. I lost everything. She knew the broad strokes already. Jade had left him after learning the full truth about Carolyn's manipulation. The baby, a girl named Autumn, was with Jade full-time. Carolyn was facing criminal charges for embezzlement. Walter had drunk himself into a hospital bed. The Carter name, which had once opened every door in Atlanta, now closed them. Marcus, Nia said, her voice calm, you did not lose everything. You never had it. The sooner you understand that, the sooner you can start building something that is actually yours. For the first time in your life, there was silence on the other end, then a sound that might have been crying. Nia hung up. Not in anger, not in triumph, in peace. She sat in her office and looked out at the city. She thought about Aunt Evelyn. She thought about the cracked mirror in the service kitchen and the gilded mirror in the master bedroom. She thought about the woman who had been on her knees on a kitchen floor, picking up broken glass with bleeding hands, and had chosen to stand up. Forgiveness is not about letting someone off the hook. It is about taking yourself off theirs. You do not forgive for them. You forgive so that the weight of what they did stops following you into every room you enter. The grand opening of the Evelyn Baptiste House in Savannah was on a warm Saturday in October. Press was there. Community leaders, women who had already enrolled in the programs. The modest house with the peeling wallpaper had been restored and expanded into something beautiful. A place that honored what it had been, while building toward what it could become. Nia stood on the porch with a pair of ceremonial scissors, ready to cut the ribbon. The crowd was smiling. Denise was in the front row, wearing sunglasses to hide the fact that she was already crying. Victor Brooks stood to the side, looking quietly satisfied. Nia looked out at the faces before her. Women of every age, every background, every story. Some of them had been told they were nothing, just like she had. Some of them were still trying to believe they were something. She knew what that felt like. She knew it in her bones. She leaned into the microphone. This house is not mine, she said. It belongs to every woman who has ever been told she was not enough. Every woman who has been made invisible in her own life. Every woman who stood in a room full of people and felt completely alone. She paused. My Aunt Evelyn built an empire in silence. She never asked for applause. She never asked for permission. She just built. And she left it to me, not because I was the strongest or the smartest, but because she knew I would use it to build something that mattered. So this is my promise. This house will always be here. The doors will always be open, and no woman who walks through them will ever be told she is not enough. Not here, not ever. She cut the ribbon. The crowd applauded. Denise took off her sunglasses and stopped pretending she was not crying. As the crowd moved inside for the reception, Victor pulled Nia aside. His face was serious, the way it got when he had something important to say. Nia, we found something in Evelyn's safety deposit box. Another letter. And a second document. Nia's stomach tightened. What kind of document? Victor chose his words carefully. Your aunt had a daughter nobody knew about. She was born in 1971 and given up for adoption. Evelyn never spoke of her, but she never stopped looking for her either. He paused. And she has a legal claim to half the estate. The world went quiet. The sounds of the celebration faded. The applause, the laughter, the clinking of glasses, all of it receded until there was nothing but Nia and the weight of those words. She stood on the porch of her aunt's house, the house that had started everything, and she felt the ground shift beneath her feet for the second time in her life. But this time, she did not crack. She did not crumble. She did not look for a mirror to see if she was still standing. She already knew she was. Then I guess we are not done yet, she said. She turned back to the crowd, squared her shoulders, and walked inside. People ask me when I became strong, she would later tell an interviewer. They think it was the day I stood in that ballroom, or the day I signed those papers, or the day I built something with my name on it. But that is not when it happened. I became strong the night I was on my knees in a kitchen, picking up broken glass with bleeding hands. And I decided to stand up, not because I knew I would win, but because I knew I deserved to. And if you are hearing this right now, and you are in that kitchen, on your knees, bleeding, wondering if it is worth it, I need you to hear me. Get up. Not tomorrow. Not when it is easier. Now. Because the life you are supposed to live is waiting for you. And it is bigger than anything they told you that you deserved. Nia Carter went on to expand the Evelyn Baptiste Foundation to 14 states. The program has helped over 3,000 women start businesses and find stable housing. Carolyn Carter pleaded guilty to an embezzlement charges and served 18 months in a minimum security facility in Georgia. Marcus Carter works as a property manager in Macon, Georgia. He and Nia have never spoken again. Jade Kensington raises her daughter Autumn in a small house outside Atlanta. She enrolled in the Evelyn Baptiste House program 2 years after the divorce. Raymond Carter manages maintenance operations for the Baptiste portfolio. He attends Gamblers Anonymous meetings every Tuesday night. Denise Walker lives in a 3-bedroom house in Buckhead. She still drives a Honda Civic. She says she is waiting for the right Mercedes, and Nia Carter sits on the porch of a modest house in Savannah every summer, drinking sweet tea, looking out at the trees, and thinking about a woman who built an empire in silence and trusted her to carry it forward. She is still carrying it. She is not done yet. Closing disclaimer: this content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with real-life lessons. Every character, every scene, and every word was crafted with purpose to entertain, to inspire, and to remind you that the most powerful stories are the ones that change how you see yourself. Thank you for watching until the end. We will see you in the next one.